Good evening. I'd like to call the Thursday, August 8th, 2024 Board of Education regular meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can you please call the roll?
Dana Berthold. Here. Catherine Johnson.
Here.
Joseph Kostek.
Here.
Richard Lacine.
Present.
Caitlin Olenek.
Here.
Deidre Stokes.
Here.
Aaron Janet.
Here. We have one individual signed up for public comment. Is Bill Pender?
There we go. Gotcha. My name is Bill Pender. If you need my address, it's 343 Charleston Drive, New Lenox. I'm following up on a request that I made at the scheduled June 20th meeting that had to be rescheduled. Unfortunately, my family was out of town during the June 25th rescheduled meeting. At that meeting, I spoke about how the Saturday, May 17th graduation is going to be a conflict for my family with our youngest daughter, Sophie, graduating from Central, and our oldest daughter, Audrey, graduating from St. Ambrose. My request was that you consider moving it to Sunday, May 18th. Our friend Meg Hearn attended that meeting because if the schedules stay the same, her family would have the same issue the following year in May of 26 when her youngest daughter graduates from Central and her oldest daughter will be graduating from Bradley University. Unfortunately, Meg and her husband Tom were unable to make it tonight, but they said I could mention their names and that they could be contacted with any questions. I also mentioned that our friends whose son was graduating from USC on the evening of Friday, May 16th, and they were worried about being able to get back for their daughter's graduation from Central during the day on May 17th. Unfortunately, Jeff and Michelle Lisk also couldn't be here tonight, but also said I could mention their names. At the June 20th meeting, I mentioned that in addition to St. Ambrose and Bradley, the following schools that all likely have Lincoln Way grads also have graduations scheduled on May 17th. SLU, St. Louis University, Mizzou, Elmhurst University, Governor State, and University of Illinois. I have since learned that Lewis University also has their schedule on May 17th. I did watch the recording of the June 25th meeting, and the brief discussion on the graduation topic mentioned how families seemed to like the schedule, and admittedly, if it was not going to be a conflict for my family, it would not even have been a second thought. It would not even have entered our mind. Another thing I mentioned on June 20th is that I know this past year some students ended up having to have their own private ceremony on Sunday the 19th because they had made state for tennis and track. Already next year, IHSA has girls soccer regional quarterfinals, which still is a lot of teams still in the playoffs, scheduled for Friday, May 16th and Saturday, May 17th. There's a good chance this would impact all three schools who are each 3A for girls soccer. After the June 25th meeting, but before we watched the recording of it, we had been checking the school calendars, and soon enough the graduations appeared on May 17th. East and West both had no time shown. Central's originally showed 6:30 p.m. We were cautiously optimistic because that time frame would have worked for our family, but we were disappointed for anyone from the other schools who could have still had a conflict. We reached out to the school to confirm the time and found out it was an accident, and the time had not yet been determined. That was an accident, and I completely understand accidents happen, but it did get us thinking that in addition to Sunday request, what about having all the schools graduate at the same time later on Sunday at 6:30 or 7? This would eliminate most, if not all, university conflicts. It would eliminate any potential issue for girls soccer for both Friday and Saturday, and it could also eliminate any issues with the grade schools graduating at any of the high schools earlier in the day on the 18th. I know each of you would like to attend all the ceremonies, but I ask that you put yourself in our family's position, in the Lisk position, and the Hearns, and anyone else who may have these conflicts, and ask yourself that if any of your children's graduations, be it grade school, high school, or college, are you or your kids more concerned with what board members or administrators are in attendance, or that you as parents are in attendance? One truth that all parents of multiple kids learn early on is you often need to divide and conquer. That's expected for games, concerts, or parent-teacher conferences, but if avoidable, shouldn't be for graduations. In June, I also had mentioned that I had heard there was some hesitation on Sunday graduations, but as a reminder, the Central and West kids from New Lenox in this graduating class graduated on a Sunday in 2021 without issue. As I close, I would like to again tell you I appreciate everything the board and administration does. I currently serve as a district superintendent and have been a school administrator for 19 years. Additionally, I serve on the New Lenox Grade School Board for almost a decade, and as a result, I've been part of almost 40 graduations. During that time, I can guarantee with the exception of my 3 daughters, not one graduate was more concerned about me being there than their parents. I'm sure there are people that will think that we're being selfish or overreacting at the possibility of both my wife and I not being able to attend our daughters' graduations, but it is very important to us, and I'd be surprised if we're the only ones impacted by the Saturday graduations. We may be the only ones who know about it at this point. Plus, admittedly, we don't have a huge network of people, and in our small network of people, without even looking very far, we already found 2 families that it also negatively impacts. So I once again ask that you consider our request to move the graduations to Sunday, May 18th. Looking at the bigger picture moving forward, like the Hearn family in 2026, if the graduations stay on Saturday, I'm confident that you will have more families who have these types of conflicts. I know every administrator and board member in the district took their position to do what's best for kids, and I ask that you approach this decision with that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pender. Next up, we have presentations. Okay, sorry, I just saw Dana. Oh, technical issue, okay. Thought she was leaving.
Maybe she doesn't want to hear.
Yeah,
my
she doesn't want to hear your assessment update. Sorry,
sorry.
I do. That's why I stayed.
Good evening. Today, I'm going to present to you results from our spring 2024 assessments. We've gotten some great results and wanted to share them with you today. I will start out with the advanced placement testing, AP. As you all know, this is a wonderful program in our school that challenges students, and students have an opportunity to not only benefit from all of the points that the College Board likes to advertise, but also we hear of students being able to earn college credits and save both time and money. A look for you, a historical look of AP course enrollment. You can see, I know there's a really large black line that goes down to show you that the number of students taking AP courses, it's not the number of students, it's the number of AP courses. So it could be one student taking 4 or 5. It's gone down over the years. We have seen a bit of a change, particularly around pandemic, of students starting to balance more of their mental health and perhaps not taking as many AP courses. What you do see on the right graph there is that large, thick black line going up, is even though the number of students enrolled in our AP courses has gone down, the number of students who are actually taking the exams and having that chance to earn the college credit has gone up over the years. And you definitely see that last year in the district, we had 4,645 AP exams given. So we are proud of our students for taking the challenge of the class as well as trying to perform on the exams. College Board considers a passing score to be a 3 or higher. The exams are scored out of 5. So any student in the state of Illinois who earns a 3 or higher, it is state law if they go to a public college or university in Illinois that they have to take that as a college credit. So you can see last year we had 3,417 passing exams, which is just incredible, going up and up each year. College Board also likes to recognize the AP Scholars, and for this we have 3 different categories. College Board picks these categories and they present these awards to the students via forms of certificates. I believe if you come in the front door at Central, you see our AP Scholars there. Very similar at Lincoln Way West and Lincoln Way East. We honor these students for this as well through displays. AP Scholars are students who passed, that's the 3 or higher on the exam, 3 or more exams. And this is throughout their high school career, so it doesn't all have to be in one year. AP Scholars with honors passed 4 or more exams with an average of 3.25, so they're not getting only 3s on those exams. AP Scholars with distinction pass 5 or more AP exams with an average of 3.5 or higher. You will see that our number of AP Scholars total has gone up to 850. So not only are our kids taking the tests and passing the tests, but they're doing it in multiples. So we've had great success in that program. The other tests I'd like to update you on tonight are the College Board SAT suite of assessments. This is our normal measurement of how we look at student progress. As you know, we give the PSAT exams in the fall, and then in the spring, the state was giving the SAT and the PSAT exams. This year, we had a bit of a change. SAT moved from paper tests to digital tests. The tests were quite different. It was shorter, which the students definitely enjoyed, but I do have a brief, I guess it's more intricate than I was thinking, graphic here for you of the differences of the tests. When you look at that graphic and you kind of see that little U arrows that are going, the main difference on this test is when our students took section 1 of reading and writing, it gave them a score that they didn't see, and then section 2 was either the harder questions or the easier questions. The interesting thing for us as well about the digital SAT is in the past, we've been able to see questions. We've been able to see exactly which questions our students got wrong. The digital SAT, because of this adaptive testing, as they call it, each student had different questions, and it makes it more difficult for us to do some analysis of that. But overall, I wanted to show you how our classes were doing. Our class of 2025, as juniors, they are now our seniors. In 1 week, they will officially start as that. When they came to us as freshmen, during their 8th grade year, they were performing at a composite level of 874, and they ended at 1,082. That's phenomenal growth. It's above average. Just last school year, they had a growth of 66 points. Average growth from fall to spring is typically 40 points. Our students performed at a 66-point average. Their total growth over the years with us was 208. Phenomenal, especially when we are looking at growth. When we look at actual scores, total score, you will see we've had some bumps along the road. Again, in there, these are different students. Many of them, all that I have on the graph up there for you today, are students who were 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th, 10th, during the COVID years, when they were losing a lot of those essential skills. So that makes the growth that the class of 2025 had even greater. Class of 2026, this was last year's sophomores. They had, throughout the course of the year, growth of 25, and total growth since their 8th grade year of 99. So they are on track. Hopefully, as we typically do see, junior year, the students seem to find more importance in the test, so they seem to grow and listen and take advantage of all the wonderful test prep opportunities we have. Our class of 2026 is right on par with the other classes we've had in the past. And last year's freshmen, they had a growth last year of 48, so again above average. Since their 8th grade year, they've grown a total of 70. And again, you can see they are right on pace with the other classes that have come to us as freshmen. Another quick look for you, just kind of a snapshot, is the state and College Board also don't look at just total score, but they look at benchmarks. College Board benchmarks indicate to us that by their junior year, if they meet the benchmark, they are ready for college level coursework. So you can see our percentages in reading on the left-hand side and in math on the right-hand side. I'm excited that I was able to present this report to you tonight, but I'm even more excited to introduce you all officially to Dr. Tracy Miller, who is our new Director of Assessment and Instruction, and she and I have been processing these scores together, but she now, I will pass to her, will talk to you about our plans for the assessments coming up this year.
Thank you, Dr. Goldie. I just wanted to start off by thanking you for your time tonight. I'm excited to be here. It's been a wonderful transition. On this first slide, you will see our assessment calendar for the 24-25 school year. Not much has changed. Our students are testing at the same times of year, and they're taking the same kinds of assessments. The one notable difference is that the State Board of Education did secure a contract with ACT for the spring high school assessment. So we are shifting in the spring from SAT to ACT, which I am sure you are well aware. One decision we did make as a district was to keep that fall SAT suite in place for our students. And we did that for a couple of reasons. The first being that it allows our students to really look at national merit scholarship opportunities. It gives them a different view of that college assessment, so they can take the ACT in the spring and still know what the SAT feels like, if that's a test that they want to pursue on a Saturday for themselves. And we also, as Dr. Goldie just presented, have about 6 years worth of data on how our students perform on the SAT suite. And so we want to continue to look at that benchmark as our students come to us each fall. Also just wanted to present to you tonight a little bit of the differences between the ACT and the SAT. There are two notable differences that I wanted to highlight. The first is the testing times. You'll see that the SAT is slated at about 2 hours and 24 minutes. The ACT is a little bit longer than that. It is 3 hours and 10 minutes as it currently sits. However, you will see the difference also in the subjects that are assessed during the ACT. Most notably, the science assessment. So currently, our juniors take the SAT, and they also take the Illinois Science Assessment. In moving to the ACT, the state board has informed us that our students will be able to take the science portion, and that will count as our science assessment. So we're really excited about that for our juniors especially, because with that testing time then really will be really consistent. So our students before had to take 2 assessments and really were testing for more minutes than the ACT with that science assessment really built in together. Those are the 2 major differences, and we're excited for the school year and to welcome our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right. I would just advise students to take advantage of all the opportunities that the district provides for, I guess now ACT testing, but the Saturday tests and all the prep work, because that was invaluable for, I know, my son when he was here.
Is there still going to be any courses or prep work they can take if they choose to do the SAT as well? Like, is that something that they would offer?
Yes.
Okay.
Our curriculum in general prepares the students for both.
Okay.
And so we do feel that our decision to go with SAT suite in the fall will still be preparing the students, and they'll be able to see those strategies. Then we will shift towards the spring with the ACT. So we think it's going to give the kids knowledge and power to
Sure.
decide which test is going to be best for
Okay.
them. And our before and after school programs will address both.
Perfect.
Are you gonna continue, like, that's gonna be tradition now, you think, or are you just gonna do it, just see how it goes this year?
That is
and
something that
reassess.
everybody is asking,
Yeah.
and we don't know. Right
Yeah.
now, we think it's the smart move for our families
smart.
to be able to decide that for themselves. 6 years ago, the state, we were ACT before and we switched to SAT.
Yeah.
That was the same approach the district took at that time, and families were very thankful, and so that's why we're starting with that. We will see what people want and what the need is. I'm confident our curriculum is teaching the skills.
Right.
It's really just a matter of kind of presenting them in a different way so the kids get used to what it looks like.
It'll be interesting to see how the data falls too for each student based on the Placement Act too. Now you'll have 2 sets of data and see how it falls into, yeah, it's smart. Yeah. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget.
All right, good evening. It's my pleasure to present Lincoln Way's fiscal year 25 budget tonight. Before I begin, I would like to draw attention to your packet materials, if you wouldn't mind looking in board docs real quick. Under the tentative budget agenda item, you should see 3 attachments listed under public content. The first is the presentation that I will go through momentarily. The second is a document that summarizes each of our funds and shows percentage changes as well as dollar amount changes from last year to now. There's some descriptors and different areas listed for each fund. When I felt like it might be informative and helpful, I did place an explanation for a rationale for the change in the notes column on the right-hand side. The final document is the fiscal year 25 budget book detail. This document provides more detailed information about the budget amounts in every specific area. This document is considered the most comprehensive form of the budget. Those 2 documents I will not necessarily walk through in granular detail. I'll just focus on the presentation at a high level tonight, but please feel free to look at them. There is no action needed from the board tonight, so you can look through those now while I present. If you have questions, let me know. Also, after the presentation is done, the budget will be placed on display for 30 days prior to the hearing in September, so you do have time to digest those as well and think of questions later if you have them. All right, so without further ado, what you see on this slide, strategic goal, develop a plan for long-term financial stability. That should look familiar to all of you as part of your 24 through 29 strategic plan. The action plans here, specifically the first one, excuse me, this budget is one part of our work in the business office to ensure that financial stability. So that strategic plan guides our work and daily actions on our end. Tonight, I'll focus on these items here on this slide. An overview of the operating funds, the revenues and expenditures at a glance. That second document in your packet materials focuses on modifications from when I presented to you in June in preliminary form. I'll talk a little bit about capital project funding, and then we'll end with an overall look at projected fund balances. On this slide, the fiscal year 25 operating budget includes, and you can see in the red column on the far, light red column on the far right side, $121 million in operating revenue, $116 million in expenditures, and a funding allocation, or that fund transfer, if you will, of $4.5 million for future capital improvements. Based on these budget figures, we project ending this year with an operating surplus of $519,236 and an operating fund balance of $40,069,473. On this slide, I would like to draw your attention to a few key areas. At the top, you'll see that local revenues are being held flat from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. There are a few reasons for that. First, we will no longer be receiving approximately $1.2 million in rental revenue from Lockport High School. So that's something that hit our books last year that we don't have this year. And then, as we discussed in June, this happened three fiscal years ago. We got a significantly higher amount of our tax revenue early this year, much more than the 50-50 split. And so even if you shift that to be 52-48, when you get that much money ahead of June 30th, it really draws up our surplus in fiscal year 24, and then we had to decrease that revenue in fiscal year 25. It's a timing thing, it's not a problem, but it makes local revenue look flat for that reason. Second, if you take a look at state revenue, you'll see an increase of approximately $2 million. We received just this week, the state published the district's evidence-based funding allocation. It's increased about $2 million from just over $11 million to just over 13 for fiscal year 25. The last revenue category is federal revenue, and that is a notable decline, and you can see that that's due to the expiration and runout of ESSER and ARP grant monies that have been running for several years as part of the federal economic recovery efforts after COVID. On the expense side, and I will detail this on later slides, I'll walk through each of those categories. There is nothing in particular that I think stands out year over year. In the aggregate, our operating expenses are up 5.86%. And then finally, before I move on, and you will hear this later in my treasurer's report. The treasurer's report tonight, every time we do this in August, it's on the fiscal year close, so it's on as of June 30th. There were many ongoing capital improvements and contractor-related projects that we budgeted for to make payment prior to June 30th. Many of those projects had minor delays or moderate delays. We're in great shape now. We're doing some punch list items and wrapping up before the school year starts, but almost none of those invoices were received in full or in part from those contractors and from our architects signing off on the big projects by June 30th. So what does that mean? What that means is we didn't make payment out of our budget in fiscal year 24. And so, once again, that drew up the surplus, and we now need to pay for them out of fiscal year 25. My recommendation to do this most cleanly is that we transfer $3 million from the Operations and Maintenance Fund into Fund 60, into the Capital Projects Fund. We have done this in past years with a back date of June 30th. So that allows that money to be moved as of June 30, move it into 60, and we can pay it out of capital projects this year. We've done that with our auditor's blessing and approval 2 years ago. I'll elaborate further when I get to that portion of the meeting. That decision is ultimately yours, of course, but I did illustrate that, and in the blue column for fiscal year 24 actuals, at the bottom for transfers, you'll see that number looks like $6 million. You've already approved 3. And so when I'm recommending a back date to move $3 million over, that would bring the total to 6. Once again, all the modifications are noted and detailed in your supporting documents in the packet materials, so if you do have questions, let me know. Very quickly, revenues by source. In the fiscal year 25 budget, as you know, property taxes account for, by far and away, most of our revenue here in Lincoln Way. In blue, you can see elementary district payments account for 5%. That is reimbursement for our feeder districts for transportation services. So we have higher transportation expenses because of it. That revenue is their reimbursements. Other local revenue, that would be CPPRT, that would be our student registration fees, that would be interest from investments and income through there. That's other local revenue that accounts for 10% of our budget. Evidence-based funding, we were pleased to see that increase by $2 million. So that now accounts for 11% of our operating revenue. Other state and federal revenue are 2% each. For many school districts, the purple, the orange, the green, those slices of the pie are far more significant in other school districts. And so, as you know, we continue to rely heavily on our local community. I mentioned this earlier about the levy, but our local revenues are expected to stay flat, a lot of that because of tax levy. CPPRT, all school districts are expecting another 25% decrease, so we're losing about $400,000 there again. And then I did hold interest income flat. We had about $2.2 million last year. I was going to move that more conservative, and our liquid rates over the last month have actually been the highest to date. So I feel comfortable holding it flat for this year. State revenues, I mentioned EBF going up. All other state sources, categorical grants, transportation aid are flat, and then the federal revenue decreasing, as I mentioned earlier. Expenditures by type. As you know, salaries and benefits are our most significant expense. Salaries alone counting for 60%, and benefits, that is largely medical insurance, but it is also TRS and IMRF, our pension funds. All employee benefits account for 11% in the fiscal year 25 budget. Purchase services account for 12%. These are our cleaning contracts. If you remember, we moved cleaning companies. This was our first year that we just finished with GSF. Bus leases, as you know, we extended buses for a couple of years, and then we finally got to a point where we had to get new buses. They are very expensive, and I will tell you now that I'm already very pleased. Mr. Reeser and I have had many conversations. I think, Mr. Lachine, you brought this up in the past about getting out to bid early. We're already taking a look at the bid specifications and trying to control costs, do some redesign, and hoping to go out this fall. So more of an update in September and later on that, but that's a positive piece. Other purchase services or liability insurance, our athletic trainer contract, which is held flat, and repairs and maintenance in our facilities world. Supplies, materials, capital, tuition, dues, and fees are 10, 2, and 5, respectively. One thing I did want to note, I feel really good about where we have stabilized for medical insurance. You all have heard me say this enough times that I owe you the statement to say I believe we've stabilized and that we're in a good spot in our budget. As you can see, in 19, 20, and 21, we actually saw expenses go down, and then we saw that huge spike that no one accounted for. I have discussed this slide in particular with about 4 or 5 other large school district business managers who have seen similar trends, and if anything, they have not stabilized. So they would increase their budget like we were. They were trying to fight off a deficit in this area because this is millions of dollars, and their expenses continue to outpace their budget. So I think we've done a good job making the correction. We're stable, and so I put the 25 budget for medical at 9 million here. Salaries and benefits expected to increase 4.6 million to 82.7. As you know, the salary costs are based on staffing needs and on our CBAs. As I mentioned, medical insurance stabilizing. One positive, our local IMRF rate has dropped for 2 years in a row, and we're anticipating it to drop for a third. So if you look in detail at the treasurer's report for last fiscal year, you'll see that we came in nicely under budget for IMRF, and so I was able to draw that down for 25. Purchase services, I mentioned the bus leases. Our District 843 transportation costs have gone up $150,000 this year, so that's something that we are watching. And then as we transitioned that cleaning company, we actually made 13 and a half months worth of payment last year, just as a kind of as a carryover in transitional time. So even though they do have a moderate increase in their contract, we're actually going to see less this year in expense. So that's some positive news. Supplies and materials expected to go up $750,000. Electricity is an area, you've heard me mention this before, it was wildly high over this last year. So Chuck and I met with our advisors for utilities, for electric and gas, and we feel like we're in a good spot, that it is going to stabilize. Some of that ComEd tax is going to peel off. Technology devices and other supplies up $180,000 per the tech renewal plan, and natural gas at $275,000, which I believe is conservative. One thing I do want to note on capital outlay, if you look in our operating funds, this is expected to go down. We continue to look at a shift toward really using Fund 60 for our large projects. Some smaller things, lighting, flooring, furniture, can come out of our operating funds, but we're looking to move more and more of our true capital funding into Fund 60. So that's why you see a decrease there. Tuition dues and fees, private facility tuition, we believe will be down a little bit. 843 tuition costs are up. So again, that's something we're looking at fiscally. Non-capital equipment expected to go up as part of the tech equipment replacement plan. So that's kind of an overview of expenses. That brings us to the transfer. I feel like it's my job to make sure that we maintain our operating fund balances per your policies and requirements, but also to make sure that if we have some room in particular summers, as you've heard Dr. Tingley say and Chuck say, we know we need as much as we can get for facility improvements. And so what the fiscal year 25 budget has for an allocation and pre-funding is $4.5 million. What I will be watching between now and next month, and obviously, as you know from past years, I won't walk through this entire presentation in September. What I will simply say is these items that I've been watching, the minor changes, the minor tweaks are, and the final surplus is. And so if you have questions between now and then, please let me know. I'm going to watch CPPRT, I'll watch our insurance bills, any kind of final staffing changes that Dr. Murphy needs to make, and then CPI and interest rates. If I feel a change is needed, I'll make it. I'll note that in September at the budget hearing, okay? All of this to say the yellow cell there, I feel good. I think we are stable. Excuse me. I think we're stable. And this budget, if it comes to fruition as though I've planned it, and we know it won't exactly, but 34% fund balance is where we would end. So I feel really good about our ending spot at the close of fiscal year 25. Happy to take any questions you guys might have.
All right, any questions for Mike? I had one for you, and it's not really too major, but in the slide 4, non-capitalized equipment, what goes into that?
Slide
We're up 61%. Just if someone looks at that number.
Oh, yeah. So 61%, but only a couple $100,000.
Right.
And so when you look at, and I can do some digging and get a more detailed answer for you, Aaron, next month, but non-capitalized equipment is anything that's more than a supply, so it's over $500 in cost, but it's not capitalized. So we're not talking big boilers and cooling units and things like that. Anything over 5,000 is capitalized. Non-capital equipment is that in-between threshold, and it has a lot to do with our servers, tech infrastructure, things like that, that fall in that cost range.
Just curious.
Yep.
It's definitely a better looking budget than 7, 8 years ago. Yeah, a little bit.
No, Mike and Kelly have really honed in. It's very detailed, as you can see. There's explanations in each category. And so the other two documents in the backup materials are much more detailed than this presentation. Put a lot of time into it. Those two, and then the principals, and then the department heads we've just become much more refined in this process each year, which makes it easier to put something like this together. And then, if Mike's outside of a percent and a half in any area, that's a problem, and he has to buy lunch. But he's been within a percent on almost every category all the way through. So Mike and Kelly have done a good job putting this together.
Yeah, definitely thank you to you and your staff and everyone in the business office. Kelly, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we are going to move on to the consent agenda. We have items D1 through D7. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All right, do we have any questions or anybody want anything pulled? No? All right, hearing none, can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
All right, next up on our action items, we have presentation of invoices for June 21st, 2024 through August 8th, 2024.
Motion to approve invoices from June through August 8th, 2024 in the amount of $10,544,561.15.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any questions on the invoices? All right, hearing none, can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
Next up, we have the treasurer's report for June 2024.
In June, revenues totaled $55.7 million. Expenses totaled $11.7 million, and the all funds cash balance on June 30 was $61.6 million. Through June 30th, I am pleased to say that we ended our year with operating revenues being 102.3% of what we planned for. And again, 2% of that was from early tax revenues. So we were really tight there. 97.4% of budgeted operating spending had occurred. And once again, with those invoices and a potential transfer with your support, that would bring us in line to about 99. Overall, operating revenues and expenses trended appropriately. I highlighted those bullet points there. Investments, we continue to work with PMA. As I mentioned earlier, the liquid rates they're just staying high. So I am laddering investments. I'm locking in because we're high right now with our cash value. We're at our high point in the year. So I have, and you can see in the investment summary attached in your packet materials, there are several small CDs and then mid-size investments that we've locked into while we have the cash on hand. Continue working with them. And that's really all I have to say in terms of the treasurer's report tonight.
All right, any questions for Mike? All right. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the treasurer's report for June 2024 as presented?
So moved.
All right, can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
All right, next up, we have the student activities report for June 2024 and July 2024.
Both student activity reports are in your backup materials. The majority of the outstanding balances in June were corrected by July. July outstanding, we still had class of 2024 East and esports East. We hosted sectional in esports and IHSA, sectional and regional, so we'll have to get that one cleaned up, but I had asked the board to approve both student activity accounts as presented.
Can I get a motion to approve the student activities reports as presented? We have a motion and a second. Any questions? How many kids were at the events?
At the esports?
Yeah.
I do not know.
A lot?
I don't know. I
Just-
do not know. That I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
All right.
It has grown.
I was just curious.
I know they're in the auditoriums now. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
we practice at screens throughout the buildings, but competitions in auditoriums.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? No. All right, hearing none, vote is open already. You beat me to it, Michelle.
Vote unanimous, motion passes.
All right, next up is the District 843 fiscal year 2025 budget.
Yes, including your backup materials is the 843 budget. It's a formality that we do approve this. We are up quite a bit. Some of those we understand, some we're still kind of in conversation. What one of the things we're going to do as part of our 5-year strategic plan is we're looking at all programs. And so over the next year or two, we will take a close look at our relationship with 843 as time kind of passes. We anticipate about 24 students next year in Pioneer Grove, Laura? Just about 24 students, and transportation has gone up, the cost has gone up. So we'll continue to evaluate, kind of how that fits into what we do. The cooperative itself, it's a little different for the high school because we're not necessarily sharing programs like the feeders are. Our programs are standalone within Pioneer Grove. Have no complaints about the program. They've done a great job for our students, but as you know, we did have students at the McKay Center. We've taken over that programming, and now we have Bridges. It would have been about 7-8 years ago when we started our new transition program. At that time, we were, we had about 20 students and they had about 20 students. We're like, why wouldn't we just have one program? They didn't have the space. We started the program. This year, we're at 89. Okay. This year at 89, but in 2 years, Laura assures me that we'll be at 116. And so that program, am I right? Okay, 114?
115?
So we've continued to grow. So we're, over the next 2 years, we're gonna have to look at some different options. The transition program is housed here at Central, and as we add 30 more students, that's not just one classroom. And so we're gonna have to look at some different options, and that'll be part of our strategic plan that we'll report back to the board probably in the spring as we take a year to look at things. But we do need to approve this budget. We will have 24 students, and then we do have several special ed transportation, I think more than 100 are currently served by the special ed transportation. So we need to approve this budget as presented.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the District 843 budget for fiscal year 2025 as presented? We have a motion and a second. Any questions about it?
Why are we anticipating a decrease in the cost of itinerant services? I'm just curious. If everything else went up, why is that going?
Itinerant services, Laura?
Why do you think those are going down? I'm just, it's
I
not,
don't know.
gotcha. So based on, what students.
If we have a
need
student
what?
age out.
I was just curious when I was looking, okay,
It's 1 year, and then they graduate, and those minutes drastically decrease.
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Good question.
Dana, do you want to add anything?
No, I think, it's always a struggle when you're looking at a year-to-year group of students that can range from, like Laura just said, it can be all over the place and it can change per day. So I think one of the things that I've noticed that the co-op is trying to do is to continue to build in safety measures and make sure that the students get all the resources, and the out-of-district facilities are very limited. So other services that typically wouldn't be provided by a co-op are now being necessary because the outside resources are limited. So I do think that as the planning goes on, and I know Laura's aware that those are the things that you have to consider. You know, is it easier to staff within a local area versus trying to find a single facility that can manage the needs of all students?
No, and if you, just the one slide Mike did have up there, while we are down in private facilities, we're a little bit up here, and it's basically a wash as we look at the grand scheme, and it can swing $250,000 with one student, correct?
All right, any other questions from anybody? All right, well, the vote is open again.
Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
All right, we have the intergovernmental agreement between Lincoln Way Area Special Education District 843 and Lincoln Way Community High School District 210 for use of McKay Education Center.
And once again, as I've said, we've taken over programming, but we continue to use facility. So every year, we just need to approve the addendum to our agreement with the terms and conditions. Basically says we are paying the operating costs, but not paying rent as we are a member of the cooperative.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none. Michelle, can you open the vote, please?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
Next up, we have the transfer resolution for capital improvements.
I will be succinct here. Obviously, I spoke about this during the budget presentation. This is the $3 million I'm requesting. What I did is I did kind of a deep dive on outstanding invoices, things that we had expected to receive or at least pay part of by June 30th that we didn't get. That came to just about $2 million. Additionally, when you amended the budget in June, we really raised up service costs, electricity, other utilities, and I will be the first one to tell you that I'd rather overshoot that and be more conservative than needed, but we came in under budget. And so what that left us was almost another $1 million of monies earmarked for operations and maintenance purposes. So they're in that bank account, so to speak. And so what I would recommend is we make this total $3 million, move it to Fund 60 so that we can pay those invoices and then also support sort of that pre-funding mentality for capital improvements. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
It's also kind of our long-term goal. We need to get to the point where we have $1 million cushion in there. Some of us were on the board when we had the boiler issue, and we had to go to the bank and borrow another $500,000 until we got the insurance payment back. Having a little bit extra in Fund 60 provides that so-called insurance, rather than putting it into our budget each and every year under a different category. This kind of gives us that insurance for a rainy day, so to speak, if something does break.
Yes, sir.
I know we've talked to the auditors about this. This doesn't impact the audit in any way. It doesn't put a note on it or ding us in any way.
Well, one of the things it does do, Aaron, it doesn't give us a note, but if we leave everything where it is and we go with the budget of pretty much the expenditures we have set for the upcoming year, that would put us in a deficit next year. And we kind of want to stay away from those. Some of us,
Yeah, I don't
little
wanna do
PTSD from that. But I do think that, you know, we can talk about accrual accounting. Kelly could come to the mic, but this is kind of a way around that, so to speak. But it is within the confines of what the auditors allow. Mike, anything to add to that?
Only that the last time we did this, we did make sure that we consulted both from a legal counsel standpoint and auditors. The auditors were very supportive, actually. They just wanted it to be board resolution like any other transfer.
Yes.
And we have the back date of June 30th. Kelly's already spoken with them. We'll include it in the FY24 audit. All good to go. pending your support.
Well, as much as I'd like to discuss cash basis for Accrual County, 8 o'clock on a Thursday night, I would ask for a motion to approve the fund transfer resolution
Thank you, sir.
2024-07 as presented. Rich, I don't know if you can move and second. Oh, okay, I didn't hear you. I thought he did both.
He did a quick second.
Okay,
Wasn't sure who went first there.
all right. So we have a motion and a second and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open.
Nice try, Rich.
I'm gonna think about it for a few minutes.
Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
All right, next up, we have established the fiscal year 2025 budget hearing date.
Need it on display for 30 days and then hold a budget hearing prior to your regular meeting on September 19th. So included in your materials is Resolution 2024-08 for your approval.
We get a motion to approve the budget hearing date as presented.
So moved.
Assuming no questions, so could you please open the vote?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
All right, next up, under informational items, report of the Special Education District 843 Governing Board.
I think we covered a lot of it in our previous, so I have nothing else to add.
Great, thank you. FOIA requests,
No FOIAs.
buildings and ground report.
They are included in your backup materials.
First reading for policies.
So there are some amendments and adjustments from press, and then also an update to Board Policy 771 in your backup materials. Be happy to answer any questions, but we'll bring these back for approval in September. Also in September, we will have an updated succession plan, an updated
Org chart.
org chart. So all of that will be ready to go for the new school year. And we'll get all of that approved in September. Did make one change to 771. I'd sent the board an email regarding consistency on residency questions. Two of the policies, actually all three policies, the superintendent makes the decision. One policy allowed for a formal appeal to the board. I think it makes sense for that to stay with the superintendent, as then it provides some consistency. People can always appeal to the board via email, via public comment. That would just be my recommendation, but happy to change any of that between now and September. But just for consistency, it's something we had discussed last year. Just think it makes it cleaner. We currently are working with 4 inter-district transfers, and as I've said, we've been very consistent on those. Yes.
Oop.
What is the custom?
No, your mic,
No,
I
just-
think your mic went off.
There.
There you
What
go.
is the custom and practice like for neighboring neighboring districts?
Neighboring districts, superintendent.
okay.
And then if they want to go to the outside appeal, they do. You have to remember, we wrote some of our own policies when we shifted students around several years ago. And that's where we added some of that discrepancy, as we went, the junior high boundaries is not a policy that other districts necessarily have. Some districts change from time to time, and that's always very, it can be a volatile process as you're changing neighborhoods from one high school to another. But yeah, to answer your question, quite often it lies with the superintendent administration.
Any other questions on the policies? No? All right, we then have the legislative report.
Nothing additional to provide this evening?
Nothing under superintendent's district report.
Nope.
Any other district business?
We do. we need to assign members for closed session.
Oh, that's right. So Catherine, I believe you asked about it earlier, so thank you for volunteering. And Rich, in celebration of your anniversary of your first August board meeting, I will assign you to your
Closed session
second,
minute
to your
review.
closed session meeting minutes. See what happens when you show up? Well, if you didn't show up, you'd also be assigned, so I mean, it's a win-win for you. Anything under the correspondence?
Yes, I would like to share with the board, when we went one-to-one, one of the concerns was the laptop insurance and things breaking and different things. Well, Lenovo has recognized us as a top 10% of self-maintenance for the entire North America region, meaning Cheryl and her team are fixing everything here. So we're not turning it back in. So far, the $30 per student, right, insurance has covered what we've been dealt. So Cheryl, you and your team, excellent job. There's a picture of the plaque on there, so I wanted to recognize them for an outstanding job. Kids do things every once in a while, sometimes accidents, sometimes intentional, but we're able to get them up and running. So Cheryl, thank you and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Quite an undertaking. And then last but not least, congratulations to Dr. Michael Duback, who tried to get the nameplate back on time, didn't get it done. So Michael, congratulations defending your dissertation.
Oh, thank you.
New stripes on the graduation gown next year. Got to get you a new, got to get a new gown, new hat, yeah, all the good stuff.
No closed session? No closed session, so there's no action after closed session, no other business. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is September 19th, 2024.